Hey, what's going on, everybody? How are you doing tonight, JB? I hope everybody's doing well. Had a great Monday. I know I had a relaxing Monday. I'm at my brother's house this week, but I told myself I was still going to read. You may hear dogs walking around. Just really tired. Yeah, man, I feel ya. I think I even napped today because I also took all this time off work. And yeah, I passed out for a little bit. It was only like 30 minutes, but it was still a nap. So lay down, Teddy. This dog is like the sweetest dog though. But yeah, it's really good to see you. I'm really looking forward to this read. We're starting a new book today, if everybody remembers correctly. We're gonna start Ozma of Oz. Routine is always good. I will say that. Which I guess this week is a little bit odd because this week is all about breaking routine for me. And so this isn't like everything that I would normally do, it's just in a different place, and I feel like it's training my brain differently. Yeah, we have to sometimes, right? It might even be just you and me, and you know what? I'd be okay with that. We might have a liquor here and there, but honestly, I was kind of missing y'all, and even though I can't like have the big art gallery, at least we can still read and wind down from the night. So, and I also have to be cognizant of things, and I appreciate that, brother. Well, I'll still give it a couple of minutes here, just to see if anybody else wants to join. I didn't promote this. I didn't put it in any Discord. Honestly, I wasn't even certain I was going to do it until about 10 minutes before I did. So, and you can hear me okay, yeah? Okay. Cool. Because I want to be loud and enunciate. I don't want to, because I don't know how much you can hear, and my brother's dad is trying to sleep right now, so I'll give it about this long, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And we are going to get into Ozma of Oz, if we can recap the little bit of the last story. Turns out Tip was Ozma the whole time. Spoiler alert, sorry. And it was the old hag Mombi that transformed him into Ozma of Oz, or into Tip. And it was all to keep her off the throne of the Emerald City, whom she was rightfully the heir of. The Wizard of Oz conspired with Mombi to hide her from the world for so long so he could rule. And that just gave me a little bit of a different vision of the wizard, I will say that. So, from there, we read the author's note last time as well, and Frank went on to say that he kept getting letters for years and years to come, more so now about, well, what about the Cowardly Lion, and what happened to Ozma after? And so he decided to write a lot more stories based on these requests. So Ozma of Oz it is. But how was your day? I know you said you were tired, man, but I hope everything went swimmingly. Okay, guess we can just do that. Philosophy. What's going on, man? It's really good to see you. Super anxiety and stress these days. You know how it is, huh, man? Well, I am super sorry to hear that you are a little bit stressed, my brother, and a little high anxiety. And, you know, although I haven't really been the best, as I've been super busy running around all kinds of places getting ready for this week, you can always reach out if you ever need to talk, man, and I'm always there for you. Or if you ever need to bounce ideas, I'm always there for that, too. Alien! I actually owe you a very, very deep apology. It seems I missed your last live when you were opening the new sets. And I felt awful about it. I really, really am sorry for that, Alien. And how are you? How was your day? Giant Night! What's going on, man? It's good to see you. Yeah, absolutely. For sure, and I'll be ready. Wow, that's rare. Not solving it, but not having to do the final step. We call that a skip. Yeah, that is true. That is true. I've been missing a lot lately, actually, just because of not only the work schedule, my own schedule, and now I'm not at my house this week, so that proved to be a little bit tough too. But I figured, you know what? If I can do anything, I can at least read on Monday. So I figured we could do that, and we're gonna start our next book rather. It's good to see you, Rafa. So yeah, it's gonna be nice, and tomorrow I'm dedicated. In fact, starting tonight, because I do have to get a lot of Charmander art off of my phone, because I like to turn my shorts into a long form just so that I can kind of play both ways. I could never decide which way I liked it better, so I did both. And it's a little side experiment to see if it actually, which one reaches more people, the short or the long version of it. So it'll be fun to see. But as soon as I do that, then I can, of course, free it up. I'm going to start working on the Dragonite, as well as I started going through TCG Pocket, and it was all in an attempt to see if I could pull art from artists that were unique to TCG Pocket. And it got so overwhelming with how many arts they reuse from the physical to Pocket, so I kind of hit a dead end there as my brain was starting to frazzle. So still writing, hell yeah, man, keep writing, never stop. I can't wait to see what you put out next. Think about just doing vids instead of lives, but my videos don't really get any views. I'm not sure if it's pointless. Well, nothing is pointless if you're having fun, Alien. I do just want to say that. And I think that what you're doing live is very unique and very similar to myself. It's not filled with, you know, like a million gajillion giveaways, and it's just a real nice place you can come and chill and appreciate the art from a true artist doing the art. And the videos, they're not pointless because they will be there forever, and whenever you want to reference it, you can have it. Exactly. It's kind of like the creme de la creme, cream of the crop type artist too. And when I say smoke was coming out of my ears with the amount of artists, I'm like, nope, that was in this set. This was Lost Origin, but that was Silver Tempest. No, was this in? No, because I can't remember Akira Igawa doing the Lake Trio in any set. And so my brain kind of folded in on itself. And I just was like, you know what, let me put it down for a second. Matt, how are you, bud? I hope you enjoyed your birthday. Stafford, how's it going, man? Genghis, how are you? It's good to see you guys. I appreciate you guys showing up and joining us to read tonight. I am away from my home at the moment, so I'm at my brother's house reading. But I have it all queued up and we are ready to go. We just passed that 10-minute mark. DSGB, what's going on, man? How you doing? It's good to see you. Yeah, it's good to see you all. Brangus McGee. Man, all the legends are popping in tonight, and I am okay with that. I am okay with that. And 9 people popped in immediately, yeah, and I really appreciate you guys, like, so much. This week, for obvious reasons, is a little anxious for me, and between you and me, I'm feeling a little bit homesick, but this is helping me out tremendously, just being around you guys. That's what I said to you, Stafford, like, Haley, your lives are lives that I can go back and watch also. Transparently, I don't do that too often, but if I have it on, it's in the background. But they're definitely like just that chill vibe, and I feel like you're like the you're like my counterpart in every way as far as streaming style goes. So I would just stick with it, because the following will come, and the ones that love you will stay. That's true. If it's all pointless, yeah, that's true. Guess it's fine. It keeps us sane, keeps us connected, right? Keeps us relevant, which I'm fear of falling out of relevancy. Don't change the song, by the way. Ray Jack for a second. I suppose we could do that. I can't. I can't hang around for the giveaway, unfortunately. But yeah, if Alien, if you want to drop Jack's link. I don't think hate is the word. It's just different. It's kind of like that theme song that you hear over and over and over again, and low-key you're kind of sick of it, but at the same time it's like yours, and it gets stuck in my head for weeks on end, and that's good. Alright, let me see if my computer's fast enough over here. Oh, thank you, Haley. Where Jack's link, yo, everybody go click on Jack's link real quick. Rafa's sponsoring a giveaway over on Jack's channel. It's not really out of town. It's probably a good 20 minutes away from my house. And I'm just at my brother's house. He's taking a trip, so I'm just making sure the animals are good. And in fact, it's funny because all of them are kind of just like asleep in random spots around me. Oh, you've been in Jack's? Alright, let me see if this is gonna... Yeah, it's taking forever and things are starting to go wonky. Dang. Do appreciate that though. Oh, absolutely. I feel like we're the proverbial dog watchers, but his old man is here too, so I always want to make sure that everybody's good. You all know what I say. Peace, love, and Pokemon. I did. In fact, I did. I brought all I bought all the Oz books. He's not that far away from me. He's about, I would say, 15-20 minutes by car, but stopping by to say hi, brother. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing real well, Mishans. I apologize. I think I saw you streaming, and I've been transitioning on over to my brother's for the week, so I haven't been as social, but I appreciate you popping in. I'm doing just fine. Oh, okay. Not doing the givey yet. And that's quite alright, man. Best of luck to everybody. And Rafa, Saint, for sponsoring giveaways the way you do, man. Yeah, it's really good to see you all. It's really helping out a little bit with just being away from home. But yeah, I did bring a book to read, and we're actually going to start a new book today in our Oz series, because I think we're still enjoying the Wizard of Oz series. It's easy, it's quite simple, but I'm just totally enthralled in all these characters, and I had no idea that a lot of these went the way that they did. And so, just to recap, we just finished The Marvelous Land of Oz, and Tip, our protagonist, made it all the way through the book, and then at the last little bit there, turns out he was Ozma of Oz all the time. And Ozma is the rightful heir to the throne of Oz in the Emerald City, and the Wizard of Oz conspired with the old hag Mombi to transform Tip, or Ozma, into Tip, and hid her away as Tip for many, many years. Oh, Brangus, I really appreciate that, fam. Truly, I do. Yeah, I really appreciate that, Brangus. And speaking of altruism, Brangus McGee, man, just knows no bounds on not just this stream, but every stream. You're always very supportive of others and just like to watch the world grow. And I can't wait for that either. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's his middle name, Halion. I think it's Brangus the Goat McGee, but represented? I guess that's madly open to one, the question of to who? Because I know that many, many people over history have represented and misrepresented and torn it apart and said what it means. In fact, the whole Dark Side of the Moon album comes to mind. But I think it was just some guy writing a story for his kid. I honestly think that's all it was. And I know many of us have heard the story of the Wizard of Oz, but how many of us remember what happens to Dorothy after that? Match our weird. Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. You match our weird. That's a good slogan. I do love that. Represented. I'm gonna ponder on it, Rafa. I'm gonna come up with what I feel it represents to me, because I feel like it can go any which way. Gold, steel, straw, heart, Oz, ounces of sad commodities. That's an interesting way to see it. That is an interesting representation. I'll remember it well. And that was definitely one direction of which I was going. My brain went much more political, which I care not to get into here. But excellent. So with that, about 20 minutes into it now. So we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to do the first 7 chapters, and that was Caradox Rift's idea, because there's 21 chapters in this book, and she figured three episodes of 7, so we should do that all together. We should podcast, but we'll talk about that. That's a really good idea, because I just saw a really cool movie I would love to talk about, but we'll talk about that later. So Ozma of Oz starts with the girl in the chicken coop. Is heart a commodity? I think it's more what the heart represents, such as love, peace, joy. Me too, Rafa, me too. The wind blew hard and joggled the water of the ocean, sending ripples across its surface. Then the wind pushed the edges of the ripples until they became waves, and shoved the waves around until they became billows. The billows rolled dreadfully high, higher even than the tops of the houses. Some of them, indeed, rolled as high as the tops of tall trees and seemed like mountains, and the gulfs between the great billows were like deep valleys. All this mad dashing and splashing of the waters of the big ocean, which the mischievous wind caused without any good reason whatever, resulted in a terrible storm. And a storm on the ocean is liable to cut many queer pranks and do a lot of damage. At the time the wind began to blow, a ship was sailing far out upon the waters when the waves began to tremble and toss and to grow bigger and bigger. The ship rolled up and down and tipped sideways, first one way, then the other, and was jostled around so roughly that even the sailor men had to hold fast to the ropes and the railings to keep themselves from being swept away by the wind or pitched headlong into the sea. And the clouds were so thick in the sky that the sunlight couldn't get through them, so that the day grew dark as night, which added to the terrors of the storm. The captain of the ship was not afraid, because he had seen storms before, and had sailed his ship through them in safety. But he knew that his passengers would be in danger if they tried to stay on deck, so he put them all into the cabin and told them to stay there until after the storm was over, and to keep brave hearts and not be scared, and all would be well with them. Now among these passengers was a little Kansas girl named Dorothy Gale, who was going with her Uncle Henry to Australia to visit some relatives they had never seen before. Uncle Henry, you must know, was not very well, because he had been working so hard on his Kansas farm that his health had given way and left him weak and nervous. So he left Aunt Em at home to watch after the hired men and take care of the farm, while he traveled far away to Australia to visit his cousins and have a good rest. Dorothy was eager to go on with him on this journey, and Uncle Henry thought she would be good company and help cheer him up. So he decided to take her along. The little girl was quite an experienced traveler, for she had once been carried by a cyclone as far away from home as the marvelous land of Oz, and she had met with many good adventures in that strange country before she managed to get back to Kansas again. So she wasn't easily frightened. Whatever happened, and when the wind began to howl and whistle and the waves began to tumble and toss, our little girl didn't mind the uproar in the least bit. "Of course, we'll have to stay in the cabin," she said to Uncle Henry and the other passengers, "and keep quiet as possible until the storm is over, for the captain says if we go on deck, we might get blown overboard." No one wanted to risk such an accident as that, you may be sure. So all the passengers stayed huddled up in the dark cabin, listening to the shrieking of the storm and the creaking of the masts and the rigging and trying to keep from bumping into one another when the ship tipped sideways. Dorothy had almost fallen asleep when she was aroused with a start to find Uncle Henry was missing. She couldn't imagine where he had gone, and he was not very strong. She began to worry about him, and to fear he might have been careless enough to go on deck. In that case, he would be in great danger, unless he instantly came down again. The fact that Uncle Henry had gone to lie down in his little sleeping berth, but Dorothy did not know that. She only remembered that Aunt Em had cautioned her to take good care of her uncle, so at once she decided to go on deck and find him. In spite of the fact that the tempest was now worse than ever, and the ship was plunging into the really dreadful manner. Indeed, the little girl found it was much as she could do to mount the stairs to the deck, and as soon as she got there, the wind struck her so fiercely that it almost tore away the skirts of her dress. Yet Dorothy felt a sort of joyous excitement in defying the storm, and while she held fast to the railing, she peered around through the gloom, and thought she saw a dim form of a man clinging to a mast not far from her. This might be her uncle, so she called out as loudly as she could, "Uncle Henry! Uncle Henry!" But the wind screeched and howled so madly that she scarce heard her own voice, and the man certainly failed to hear her, for he did not move. Dorothy decided she must go to him, so she made a mad dash forward, during a lull in the storm, to where the big square chicken coop had been latched to the deck with ropes. She reached this place in safety, but no sooner had she seized fast hold of the slates of the big box in which the chickens were kept, than the wind, as if enraged because the little girl dared to resist its power, suddenly redoubled its fury. With a scream like that of an angry giant, it tore away the ropes that held the coop and lifted it high into the air, with Dorothy still clinging to the slats. Around and over it whirled this way and that, and a few moments later, the chicken coop dropped far away into the sea, where the big waves caught it and slid it uphill to a foaming crest and then downhill into a deep valley as if it were nothing more than a plaything to keep them amused. Dorothy had a good ducking, you may be sure, but she didn't lose her presence of mind even for a second. She kept tight hold of the stout slats, and as soon as she could get water out of her eyes, she saw that the wind had ripped the cover from the chicken coop, and the poor chickens were fluttering away in every direction, being blown by the wind until they looked like feather dusters without handles. The bottom of the coop was made of thick boards, so Dorothy found she was clinging to a sort of raft, with sides of slats, which readily bore up her weight. After coughing the water out of her throat and getting her breath again, she managed to climb over the slats and stand upon the firm wooden bottom of the coop, which supported her easily enough. "Why, I've got a ship of my own," she thought, more amused than frightened at her sudden change of condition. And then, as the coop climbed up to the top of the big wave, she looked eagerly around for the ship from which she had been blown. It was far, far away by this time. Perhaps no one on board had yet missed her, or knew of her strange adventure. Down into a valley between the waves the coop swept her, and when she climbed another crest, the ship looked like a toy boat. It was such a long way off. Soon it had entirely disappeared in the gloom, and then Dorothy gave a sigh of regret in parting with Uncle Henry, and began to wonder what was going to happen to her next. Just now she was tossing on the bosom of the big ocean, with nothing to keep her afloat but a miserable wooden hen coop that had a plank bottom and slatted sides, through which the water constantly splashed and wetted her through to the skin. And there was nothing to eat when she became hungry, as she was sure to do before long, and no fresh water to drink, and no dry clothes to put on. "Well, I declare," she exclaimed with a laugh, "you're in a pretty fix, Dorothy Gale, I can tell you, and I hadn't the least idea of how you're going to get out of it." As if to add to her troubles, the night was now creeping on, and the gray clouds overhead changed to inky blackness. But the wind, as if satisfied at last with its mischievous pranks, stopped blowing this ocean and hurried away to another part of the world to blow something else, so that the waves, not being joggled anymore, began to quiet down and behave themselves. It was lucky for Dorothy, I think, that the storm subsided. Otherwise, brave though she was, I fear she might have perished. Many children in her place would have wept and given way to despair. But because Dorothy had encountered so many adventures and come safely through them, it did not occur to her at this time to be especially afraid. She was wet and uncomfortable, it is true, but after sighing that one sigh I told you of, she managed to recall some of her customary cheerfulness and decided to patiently await whatever her fate may be. By and by, the black clouds rolled away and showed a blue sky overhead, with a silver moon shining sweetly in the middle of it and the little stars winking merrily at Dorothy when she looked their way. The coop did not toss around any more, but rode the waves more gently, almost like a cradle rocking, so that the floor upon which Dorothy stood was no longer swept by water coming through the slats. Seeing this, and being quite exhausted by the excitement of the past few hours, the little girl decided that sleep would be the best thing to restore her strength and the easiest way in which she could pass the time. The floor was damp, and she was herself, wringing wet, but fortunately, this was a warm climate, and she did not feel at all cold. So she sat down in the corner of the coop, leaned her back against the slats, nodded at the friendly stars before she closed her eyes and was asleep in half a minute. Hey, ALB, what's going on, brother? How are you? Hey, what's up, Heavy D? It's good to see you back. Kara! Yes, congrats on the Vulpix. Seems I got an admirer. Man. How you doing, ALB? No, don't, man. I'm so close to that goal, man. I'm on, I think I'm within that 700 hour mark. It's good to see you, Al. I hope your shoulder's all good. I'm doing all right. Was feeling a little anxious, a little homesick. I'm away from my house at the moment, just watching my brother's animals, which clearly they're claiming me as their own now. I'll keep reading, don't worry. This is mixtape. I call it mixtape. And I apologize, Al. I was trying to get into your stream yesterday, and it was just not happening with everything I was doing. But I hope you had a good stream. Such a big smile come on my face to see your show, man. I appreciate that, for real. Well, I am absolutely trying. I have to go and get a new ID, and I'm trying to coordinate it with my mom to see if I can pass through KC on my way to Michigan. It's a big step, but I'm going to see if it is somewhat possible, and if I can, then I will. And yeah, congrats on that, alien. Alright, you ready, kitty? How did Dorothy get herself into these messes, I wonder? Mikasa Tuka, man, I appreciate that. And even if not Collecticon, you know, I can plan a trip at any time. Although, you know, a lot of card show, that would be cool. Nah, it's no problem at all, Rafa. We're just doing the reading thing tonight, man. So, this one's designed to be more background, less interactive, because I can't really see while I'm reading. So, you're all good, my brother. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I can't be over there with y'all. But I am elated to be here with everybody here. So, all right, Kat. I guess I'll start my evil tendencies now and see how I like reading with a cat on my lap. Oh, and same, Al, if you ever find yourself in Phoenix. It's small, but... The Yellow Hen, Chapter 2. Wow, he labeled these ones. I love the numbers. Oh, you got the Genghis Khan, too. That's cool. A strange noise awoke Dorothy, who opened her eyes to find that day had dawned and the sun was shining brightly in the clear sky. She had been dreaming that she was back in Kansas again and playing in an old barnyard with the calves and pigs and chickens all around her. And at first, as she rubbed the sleep from her eyes, she really imagined she was there. Cut, 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 cut-ah! Cut, 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 cut-ah! Ah, here again was a strange noise that had awakened her. Surely it was a hen cackling. But her wide open eyes first saw through the slats of the coop, the blue waves of the ocean, now calm and placid, and her thoughts flew back to the past night, so full of danger and discomfort. Also, she began to remember that she was a waif of the storm, adrift upon a treacherous and unknown sea. Cut, 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 cut-ah! What's that? Cried Dorothy, starting to her feet. Why, I've just laid an egg, that's all, replied a small but sharp and distant voice. And looking around her, the little girl discovered a yellow hen squatting in the opposite corner of the coop. Dear me, she exclaimed in surprise. Have you been here all night too? Of course, answered the hen, fluttering her wings and yawning. When the coop blew away from the ship, I clung fast to this corner, with claws and beak, for I knew if I fell into the water, I'd surely be drowned. Indeed, I nearly drowned, as it was. With all the water washing over me, I never was so wet before in my life. Yes, agreed Dorothy. It was pretty wet for a time, I know, but do you feel comfortable now? Not very. The sun has helped to dry my feathers, as it has your dress, and I feel better since I laid my morning egg. But what's to become of us? I should like to know, afloat on this big pond. I'd like to know that too, said Dorothy, but tell me, how does it happen that you're able to talk? I thought hens could only cluck and cackle. Why, as for that, answered the yellow hen thoughtfully, I've clucked and cackled all my life and never spoken a word before this morning, that I can remember. But when you asked me a question a minute ago, it seemed the most natural thing in the world to answer you. So I spoke, and I seem to keep on speaking, just as you and other human beings do. Strange, isn't it? Very, replied Dorothy. If we're in the land of Oz, I wouldn't think it so queer, because many of the animals can talk in a fairy country, but out here in the ocean must be a good long way from Oz. How is my grammar? Asked the yellow hen anxiously. Do I speak quite properly in your judgment? Yes, said Dorothy. You do very well for a beginner. I am glad to know that, continued the hen in a confidential tone. Ah, because if one is going to talk, it's best to talk correctly. The red rooster has often said that my cluck and my cackle were quite perfect, and now it's a comfort to know I'm talking properly. I'm beginning to get hungry, remarked Dorothy. It's breakfast time, but there's no breakfast. You may have my egg, said the yellow hen. I don't care for it, you know. Don't you want to hatch it? Asked the little girl in surprise. No, indeed. I never care to hatch eggs unless I have a nice snug nest and some nice quiet place with a baker's dozen of eggs under me. That's 13, you know, and it's a lucky number for hens. So you may as well eat this egg. Oh, I couldn't possibly eat it unless it was cooked, exclaimed Dorothy, but I'm much obliged for your kindness just the same. Don't mention it, my dear, answered the hen calmly and began preening her feathers. For a moment, Dorothy stood looking out over the wide sea. She was still thinking of the egg, though, so presently she asked, Why do you lay eggs when you don't expect to hatch them? It's a habit I have, replied the yellow hen. It has always been my pride to lay a fresh egg every morning, except when I'm molting. I never feel like having my morning cackle till the egg is properly laid, and without the chance to cackle I would not be happy. It's strange, said the girl reflectively. But as I'm not a hen, I can't suspected to understand that. Certainly not, my dear. Then Dorothy fell silent again. The yellow hen was some company, and a bit of comfort too. But it was dreadfully lonely out in the big ocean, nevertheless. After a time, the hen flew up and perched upon the topmost slat of the coop, which was a little above Dorothy's head, when she was sitting upon the bottom, as she had been doing for some moments past. "Why, we are not far from land," exclaimed the hen. Where is it?" cried Dorothy, jumping up in great excitement. "Over there a little way," answered the hen, nodding her head in a certain direction. "We seem to be drifting towards it, so that before noon we ought to find ourselves upon dry land again." "I shall like that," said Dorothy, with a little sigh, for her feet and legs were still wetted now, and then by the sea water that came through the open slats. "So shall I," answered her companion. "There is nothing in the world so miserable as a wet hen." The land, which they seemed to be rapidly approaching, since it grew more distinct every minute, was quite beautiful. As viewed by the little girl in the floating hen coop, next to the water was a broad beach of white sand and gravel, and farther back were several rocky hills, while beyond these appeared a strip of green trees that marked the edge of the forest. But there were no houses to be seen, nor any sign of people who might inhabit this unknown land. "I hope we shall find something to eat," said Dorothy, looking eagerly at the pretty beach, towards which they drifted. "It's long past breakfast time now. I'm a trifle hungry myself," declared the yellow hen. "Why don't you eat the egg?" asked the child. You don't need to have your food cooked as I do." "Do you take me for a cannibal?" cried the hen indignantly. "I do not know what I have said or done that leads you to insult me." "I beg your pardon. I'm sure Mrs. By the way, may I inquire your name, ma'am?" asked the little girl. "My name is Bill," said the yellow hen somewhat gruffly. "Bill? Why, that's a boy's name. What difference does it make?" "You're a lady hen, aren't you?" "Of course, but when I was first hatched out, no one could tell whether I was going to be a hen or a rooster. So the little boy at the farm where I was born called me Bill, and made a pet of me because I was the only yellow chicken in the whole brood. When I grew up, and he found that I didn't crow or fight, as all the roosters do, he did not think to change my name, and every creature in the barnyard, as well as the people in the house, knew me as Bill. So Bill I have always been called, and Bill is my name." "But it's all wrong, you know," declared Dorothy earnestly. "And if you don't mind, I shall call you Bellina. Putting the ina on the end makes it a girl's name, you see." "Oh, I don't mind that in the least," returned the yellow hen. "It doesn't matter at all what you call me, so long as you know the name means me." "Very well, Bellina. My name is Dorothy Gale. Just Dorothy to my friends, and Miss Gale to strangers. You may call me Dorothy if you like. We're getting very near the shore. Do you suppose it's too deep for me to wade the rest of the way? Wait a few minutes longer. The sunshine is warm and pleasant, and we are in no hurry." "But my feet are all wet and soggy," said the girl. "My dress is dry enough, but I won't feel real comfortable until I get my feet dry." She waited, however, as the hen advised, and before long the big wooden coop grated gently on the sandy beach, and the dangerous voyage was over. It did not take the castaways long to reach the shore, you may be sure. The yellow hen flew to the sands at once, but Dorothy had to climb over the high slatted still. For a country girl, that was not much of a feat, and as soon as she was safe ashore, Dorothy drew off her wet shoes and stockings and spread them upon the sun-warmed beach to dry. Then she sat down and watched Bellina, who was pick-pecking away with her sharp bill in the sand and gravel, which she scratched up and turned over with her strong claws. "What are you doing?" asked Dorothy. "Getting my breakfast, of course," murmured the hen, busily pecking away. "What do you find?" inquired the girl curiously. "Oh, some fat red ants, and some sand bugs, and once in a while a tiny crab." They are very sweet and nice, I assure you. How dreadful! Exclaimed Dorothy in a shocked voice. What is dreadful? Asked the hen, lifting her head to gaze with one bright eye at her companion. Why, eating live things, and horrid bugs, and crawly ants. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Goodness me, returned the hen in a puzzled tone. How queer you are. Dorothy, live things are much fresher and more wholesome than dead ones, and you humans eat all sorts of dead creatures. We don't, said Dorothy. You do indeed, answered Billina. You eat lambs and sheep and cows and pigs and even chickens. But we cook them, said Dorothy triumphantly. What difference does that make? A good deal, said the girl in a graver tone. I can't just explain the difference, but there is. And anyhow, we never eat such dreadful things as bugs. But you eat chickens that eat the bugs, retorted the yellow hen, with an odd cackle. So you are just as bad as the chickens are. This made Dorothy thoughtful. What Billina said was true enough, and it almost took her appetite for breakfast. As for the yellow hen, she continued to peck away at the sand busily and seemed quite content with her bill of fare. Finally, down near the water's edge, Billina struck her deep bill into the sand and drew back and shivered. Ow! She cried. I struck metal that time, and it nearly broke my beak. Probably was a rock, said Dorothy carelessly. Nonsense, I know a rock from metal, I guess, said the hen. There's a different feel to it. But there couldn't be any metal in the wild, deserted seashore, persisted the girl. Where's the place? I'll dig it up, and I'll prove it to you I'm right. Billina showed her the spot where she had stubbed her bill, as she expressed it, and Dorothy dug away at the sand until she felt something hard. Then, thrusting in her hand, she pulled the thing out and discovered it to be a large-sized golden key, rather old, but still bright and in perfect shape. What did I tell you? Cried the hen with a cackle of triumph. Can I tell metal when I bump into it, or is the thing a rock? It's metal, sure enough, answered the child, gazing thoughtfully at the curious thing she had found. I think it's pure gold, and it must have been laid hidden in the sand for a long time. How do you suppose it came here, Billina? And what do you suppose the mysterious key unlocks? I can't say, replied the hen. You ought to know more about locks and keys than I do. Dorothy glanced around. There was no sign of any house in that part of the country, and she reasoned that every key must fit a lock, and every lock must have a purpose. Perhaps the key had been lost by somebody who lived far away, but had wandered on this very shore. Musing on these things, the girl put the key in the pocket of her dress, and then, slowly, drew on her shoes and stockings, which the sun had fully dried. I believe, Billina, she said, I'll have a look around to see if I can find some breakfast. Ah, yes, they said I get one phone call or one stream mission, so here we are. No. Hey, what's up, Ernie? Hope you're doing well, brother. Al, so sorry I missed that. Much love, brother. I appreciate you popping in. It was supper time. Yeah, no kidding, Brangus. Or, I don't know if anybody else's parents didn't really call them in for supper, but they said if those street lights are on and your butt's not on the front porch. Oh, you don't even want to know. You don't even want to know. Mm-hmm. Come on now. Is my live stream yours? I lost my own live. Hey, Emmanuel. What's going on, Emmanuel? No, it's alright, missions. No worries. Fireflies was a hit of the evening, other than playing hide and go seek after supper. Fireflies. I've got stories with those. Oh boy, do I have stories. It's not that kind of story time, but I will remember them. Background change. Yeah, I'm at my brother's house sitting for his animals and whatnot, so. Lori! What's up, Lori? I hope you're doing well, boo. It's good to see you. You missed the first 2 chapters, but that's alright. Now you just have to be lost at who the chicken is. Oh, so we made it to land. Chapter 3, Letters in the Sand. Good to see me, Opshaw. Walking a little way back from the water's edge toward the grove of trees, Dorothy came to a flat stretch of white sand that seemed to have queer signs marked upon its surface, just as one would write upon the sand with a stick. "What does it say?" she asked the yellow hen, who trotted along beside her in a rather dignified fashion. "How should I know?" returned the hen. "I cannot read." "Oh, can't you?" "Certainly not. I've never been to school, you know." "Well, I have," admitted Dorothy, "but the letters are big and far apart, and it's hard to spell out the words." But she looked at each letter carefully, and finally discovered that these words were written in the sand. "Beware the Wheelers." "That's rather strange," declared the hen, when Dorothy had read out loud the words. "What do you suppose the Wheelers are?" "Folks that wheel, I guess. They must have wheelbarrows or baby cabs or hand carts," said Dorothy. "Perhaps they're automobiles," suggested the yellow hen. "There's no need to beware of baby crabs and wheelbarrows, but automobiles are dangerous things. Several of my friends have been run over by them." "It can't be automobiles," replied the girl, "for this is a new, wild country, without even trolley cars or telephones. The people here haven't even discovered yet, I'm sure, that is, if there are any people. So I don't believe there can be any automobiles, Bellina." "Perhaps not," admitted the yellow hen. "Where are you going now?" "Over to those trees to see if I can find some fruit or nuts," answered Dorothy. She tramped across the sand, skirting the foot of one of the little rocky hills that stood near, and soon reached the edge of the forest. At first she was greatly disappointed, because the nearer the trees were all punita, or cottonwood, or eucalyptus, and bore no fruit or nuts at all. But by and by, when she was almost in despair, the little girl came upon 2 trees that promised to furnish her with plenty of food. One was quite full of square paper boxes, which grew in clusters on all the limbs, and upon the biggest and ripest box the word "lunch" could be read in neat raised letters. This tree seemed to bear all the years around, for there were lunchbox blossoms on some of the branches, and on other tiny little lunch boxes that were as yet quite green and evidently not fit to eat until they had grown bigger. The leaves of this tree were all paper napkins, and all presented in very pleasing appearance to the hungry little girl. But the tree next to the lunchbox tree was even more wonderful, for it bore quantities of tin dinner pails, which were so full and heavy that the stout branches bent underneath their weight. Some were small and dark brown in color, those larger of a dull tin color. But the really ripe ones were pails of bright tin that shone and glistened beautifully in the rays of sunshine that touched them. Dorothy was delighted, and even the yellow hen acknowledged that she was surprised. The little girl stood on tiptoe and picked one of the nicest and biggest lunch boxes, and then she sat down upon the ground and eagerly opened it. Inside she found, nicely wrapped in white papers, a ham sandwich, a piece of sponge cake, a pickle, a slice of new cheese, and an apple. Each thing had a separate stem, and so had to be picked off the side of the box. But Dorothy found them all to be delicious, and she ate every bit of luncheon in the box before she had finished. "A lunch isn't exactly breakfast," she said to Billina, who sat beside her curiously watching. "But when one is hungry, one can eat even supper in the morning and not complain." "I hope your lunchbox was perfectly right," observed the yellow hen in an anxious tone. "So much sickness is caused by eating green things." "Oh, I'm sure it was ripe," declared Dorothy. "All, that is, except the pickle, and the pickle just has to be green, Billina. But everything tasted perfectly splendid, and I'd rather have it than a church picnic. And now I think I'll pick a dinner pail to have when I get hungry again, and then we'll start out and explore the country and see where we are." "Haven't you any idea what country this is?" inquired Billina. "None at all, but listen, I'm quite sure it's a fairy country, or such things as lunch boxes and dinner pails wouldn't be growing on trees. Besides, Billina, being a hen, you wouldn't be able to talk in any civilized country, like Kansas, where no fairies live at all." "Perhaps we're in the land of Oz," said the hen thoughtfully. "No, that can't be," answered the little girl, "because I've been to the land of Oz, and it's all surrounded by a horrid desert that no one can cross." "Then how did you get away from there again?" asked Billina. "I had a pair of silver shoes that carried me through the air, but I lost them," said Dorothy. "Ah, indeed," remarked the yellow hen in a tone of unbelief. "Anyhow," resumed the girl, "there is no seashore near the land of Oz, so this must surely be some other fairy country." While she was speaking, that selected a bright and pretty dinner pail that seemed to have a stout handle, and picked it from its branch. Then, accompanied by the yellow hen, she walked out of the shadow of the trees toward the seashore. They were part way across the sands when Billina suddenly cried in a voice of terror, "What's that?" Dorothy turned quickly around and saw coming out of a path that led from between the trees the most peculiar person her eyes have ever beheld. It had the form of a man, except that it walked, or rather rolled, upon all fours, and its legs were the same length as its arms, giving them the appearance of the 4 legs of a beast. Yet it was no beast that Dorothy had discovered, for the person was clothed most gorgeously. I don't know why I'm having trouble with words. Clothed most gorgeously in embroidered garments of many colors, and wore a straw hat perched jauntily upon the side of its head. But it differed from human beings in this respect, that instead of hands and feet, there grew at the end of its arms and legs round wheels, and by means of these wheels it rolled everywhere swiftly over the level ground. Afterward, Dorothy found that these odd wheels were the same hard substance that our fingernails and toenails are composed of. And she also learned that creatures of the strange race were born in this queer fashion. But when our little girl first caught sight of the first individual of the race, that was destined to cause her a lot of trouble. She had an idea that the brilliantly clothed personage was on roller skates, which were attached to his hands as well as its feet. "Run!" screamed the yellow hen, fluttering away in a great flight. "It's a wheeler!" "A wheeler?" exclaimed Dorothy. "What can that be? Don't you remember the warning in the sand? Beware the wheelers! Run, I tell you, run!" So Dorothy ran, and the wheeler gave a sharp, wild cry and came after her in full chase. Looking over her shoulder as she ran, the girl now saw a great procession of wheelers emerging from the forest, dozens and dozens of them, all clad in splendid, tight-fitting garments, and all rolling swiftly towards her and uttering their wild, strange cries. "They're sure to catch us," panted the girl, who was still carrying the heavy dinner pail she had picked. "I can't run much farther, Billina." "Climb up this hill, quick," said the hen, and Dorothy found she was very near to the heap of loose and jagged rocks they had passed on their way to the forest. The yellow hen was even now fluttering among the rocks, and Dorothy followed as best she could, half climbing and half tumbling up the rough and rugged steep. She was none too soon, for the foremost wheeler reached the hill a moment after her, but while the girl scrambled up the rocks, the creature stopped short with the howls of rage and disappointment. Dorothy now heard the yellow hen laughing in her cackling, henny way. "Don't hurry, my dear," cried Billina. "They can't follow us among these rocks, so we're safe enough now." Dorothy stopped at once and sat down upon the broad boulder, for she was all out of breath. The rest of the wheelers had had now reached the foot of the hill, but it was evident that their wheels could not roll upon the rough and jagged rocks, and therefore they were helpless to follow Dorothy and the hen to where they had taken refuge. But they circled all around the little hill, so the child and Billina were fast prisoners and could not come down without being captured. Then the creatures shook their front wheels at Dorothy in a threatening manner, and it seemed they were able to speak as well to make their dreadful outcries, for several of them shouted, "We'll get you in time, never fear, and when we do get you, we'll tear you into little bits." "Why are you so cruel to me?" asked Dorothy. "I'm a stranger in your country and have done you no harm." "No harm?" cried the one who seemed to be their leader. "Did you not pick our lunch boxes and dinner pails? Have you not had stolen our dinner pails still in your hand?" "I only picked one of each," she answered. "I was hungry, and I didn't know these trees were yours." "That is no excuse," retorted the leader, who was clothed in a most gorgeous suit. "It is the law here that whoever picks a dinner pail without our permission must die immediately." "Don't you believe him?" said Billina. "I'm sure the trees do not belong to these awful creatures." "Oh, don't you believe him? Don't you believe him? I'm sure these trees do not belong to these awful creatures. They are fit for any mischief, and it's my opinion that they'd try to kill us just the same if you hadn't picked a dinner pail." "I think so too," agreed Dorothy. "But what shall we do?" "Stay where we are," advised the yellow hen. "We are safe from the wheelers until we starve to death anyhow. And before that time, a good many things can happen." Hey, what's up, Boyd? Yeah, that's a good system, Boyd. It's good to see you. Extra avocado. What's going on? It's good to see you as well. I reckon so. I appreciate the like, Boyd. Pop's better. So I think we're all caught up. What are we reading today? We started Ozma of Oz. So this is the third book in the Wizard of Oz series. This is Dorothy's, she's convinced she's not in Oz, but it's called Ozma of Oz. I'm assuming they have to be in Oz at some point. And now we get introduced to one of my favorite characters in all of Oz, TikTok. Yeah, seriously. Yep, all of it is the Wizard of Oz. In fact, the Wizard of Oz you're familiar with enough, but the Marvelous Land of Oz, which was book 2, was all about a little boy named Tip, who actually turned out to be Ozma of Oz, so this is book 3. Yeah, Brangus, thanks so much for popping in, man. Sorry it was a little bit later. And I hope you have a good rest of your night, man, and a pleasant day tomorrow. Sleep well. Sleep well. Absolutely, Brangus. Anytime at all. You know me. That's what I do. And we're gonna get into chapter 4, TikTok and the machine. Oh, I'm like equal parts tired. TikTok, the Machine Man. Man, I read that as all kinds of things. Chapter 4, TikTok, the Machine Man. After an hour or so, the band of wheelers rolled back into the forest, leaving only 3 of their number to guard the hill. These curled themselves up like big dogs and pretended to go to sleep on the sands, but neither Dorothy nor Bellina were fooled by this trick. So they remained in security among the rocks and paid no attention to their cunning enemies. Finally, the hen, fluttering over to the mound, exclaimed, "Why, here's a path." So Dorothy at once clambered to where Bellina sat, and there, sure enough, was a smooth path cut between the rocks. It seemed to wind around the mound from the top to the bottom like a corkscrew, twisting here and there between the rough boulders, but always remaining level and easy to walk upon. Indeed, Dorothy wondered at first why the wheelers did not roll up this path. But when she followed it to the foot of the mound, she found that several big pieces of rock had been placed directly across the end of the way, thus preventing anyone outside from seeing it, and also preventing the wheelers from using it to climb up the mound. When Dorothy walked back up the path and followed it until she came to the very top of the hill, where the solitary round rock stood. That was bigger than any of the others surrounding it. The path came to an end just beside this great rock, and for a moment it puzzled the girl to know why the path had been made at all. But the hen, who had been gravely following her around and was now perched upon a point of the rock behind Dorothy, suddenly remarked, "It looks something like a door, doesn't it?" "What looks like a door?" inquired the child. "Why, that crack in the rock just facing you," replied Bellina, whose little round eyes were very sharp and seemed to see everything. "It runs up one side and down the other, and across the top and the bottom." "What does?" "Why, the crack. So I think it must be a door of rock, although I do not see any hinges." "Oh yes," said Dorothy, now observing for the first time the crack in the rock. "And isn't this a keyhole, Bellina?" pointing to a round, deep hole at one side of the door. "Of course. If we only had the key now, we could unlock it and see what's in there," replied the yellow hen. "Maybe a treasure chamber full of diamonds and rubies, or heaps of shining gold, or..." "That reminds me," said Dorothy, "of the golden key I picked up on the shore. Do you think that would fit this keyhole, Bellina?" "Try it and see," suggested the hen. So Dorothy searched in the pocket of her dress and found the golden key, and when she put it into the hole of the rock and turned it, a sudden sharp snap was heard. Then, with a solemn creak that made the shivers run down the child's back and the face of the rock fell outwards, like a door on hinges, and revealed a small dark chamber just inside. "Good gracious!" cried Dorothy, shrinking back as far as the narrow path would let her. For standing within the narrow chamber of the rock was the form of a man, or at least it seemed like a man in the dim light. He was only about as tall as Dorothy herself, but his body was round as a ball and made out of burnished copper. Also, his head and limbs were copper, and these were jointed or hinged to his body in a peculiar way, with metal caps over the joints, like the armor worn by knights in days of old. He stood perfectly still, and where the light struck upon his form, it glittered as if made of pure gold. "Don't be frightened," called Bellina from her perch. "It isn't alive." "I see it isn't," replied the girl, drawing a long breath. "It is only made out of copper, like the old kettle in the barnyard at home," continued the hen, turning her head first to one side, then the other, so both her little round eyes could examine the object. Once said Dorothy. "I knew a man made out of tin, who was a woodman named Nick Chopper. But he was as alive as we are, 'cause he was born a real man and got his tin body a little bit at a time. First a leg, then a finger, then an ear, for the reason that he had so many accidents with his axe, and cut himself up in a very careless manner." "Oh," said the hen with a sniff as if she did not believe the story. "But this copper man," continued Dorothy, looking at it with big eyes, "is not alive at all, and I wonder what it is made of, and why it is locked up in this queer place." "That is a mystery," remarked the hen, twisting her head to arrange her wing feathers with her bill. Dorothy stepped inside the little room to get a back view of the copper man, and in this way discovered a print card that hung between his shoulders, and being suspended from a small copper peg at the back of his neck. She unfastened this card and returned to the path where the light was better, and sat herself down upon a slab of rock to read the printing. "What does it say?" asked the hen curiously. Dorothy read the card aloud, spelling out the big words with some difficulty, and this is what she read. Smith and Tinkers, patent double action, extra responsive, thought creating, perfect talking. Mechanical man, fitted with our special clockwork attachment, thinks, speaks, acts, and does everything but live. Manufactured only at our works at Evna, land of Ev. All infringements will be promptly prosecuted according to the law." "How queer," said the yellow hen. "Do you think that's all true, my dear?" "I don't know," answered Dorothy, who had more to read. "Listen to this, Billina. Directions for using. For thinking, wind the clockwork man under his left arm, mark number 1. For speaking, wind the clockwork man under his right arm, marked number 2. For walking in action, wind clockwork in the middle of his back, marked number 3. N.B. This mechanism is guaranteed to work perfectly for 1,000 years. "Well, I declare," gasped the yellow hen in amazement. "If the copper man can do half of these things, he is a very wonderful machine. But I suppose it is all humbug, like so many other patented articles." "We might wind him up," suggested Dorothy, "and see what he'll do." "Where's the key to the clockwork?" asked Billina. "Hanging on the peg where I found the card." "Then," said the hen, "let us try him, and find out if he will go. He is warranted for 1,000 years, it seems, but we do not know how long he's been standing inside this rock." Dorothy had already taken the clock key from the peg. "Which shall I wind up first?" she asked, looking again at the directions on the card. "Number 1, I should think," returned Billina. "That makes him think, doesn't it?" "Yes," said Dorothy, and wound up number 1 under his left arm. "He doesn't seem any different," remarked the hen critically. "Why, of course not. He is only thinking now," said Dorothy. "I wonder what he's thinking about." "I'll wind up his talk, and then perhaps he can tell us," said the girl. So she wound up number 2, and immediately the clockwork man said, without moving any part of his body except his lips, "Good morning, little girl. Good morning, Miss Hen." The words sounded a little hoarse and creaky, and they were uttered all in the same tone without any change of expressions whatsoever. But both Dorothy and Billina understood them perfectly. "Good morning, sir," they answered politely. "Thank you for rescuing me," continued the machine in the same monotonous voice, which seemed to be worked by little billows inside of him, like the little toy lambs and cats the children squeeze so that they will make a noise. "Don't mention it," answered Dorothy. And then, being very curious, she asked, "How did you come to be locked up in this place?" "It is a long story," replied the copper man, "but I will tell it to you briefly. I was purchased from Smith and Tinker, my manufacturers, by a cruel king of Eve named Evil Du, who used to beat all of his servants until they died. However, he was not able to kill me, because I was not alive, and one must first live in order to die, so that all his beatings did me no harm and merely kept my copper body well polished. This cruel king had a lovely wife, and 10 beautiful children, 5 boys and 5 girls. But in a fit of anger, he sold them all to the Gnome King, who by means of his magic arts changed them all into other forms and put them in his underground palace to ornament the room. Afterward, the king of Eve regretted his wicked action and tried to get his wife and children away from the Gnome King. But when out of veil, so in despair, he locked me up in this rock, threw the key in the ocean, and then jumped in after it and was drowned. "How very dreadful," exclaimed Dorothy. "It is indeed," said the machine. "When I found myself imprisoned, I shouted for help until my voice ran down. And then I walked back and forth in this little room until my action ran down. And then I stood still and thought until my thoughts ran down. After that, I remember nothing until you wound me up again." "It's a very wonderful story," said Dorothy, "and proves that the land of Ev is really a fairyland, as I thought it was." "Of course it is," answered the Copper Man. "I do not suppose such a perfect machine as I am could be made in any place but a fairyland." "I've never seen one in Kansas," said Dorothy. "But where did you get that key to unlock this door?" asked the clockwork voice. "I found it on the shore, where it was probably washed up by the waves," she answered. "And now, sir, if you don't mind, I'll wind up your action." "That will please me very much," said the machine. So she wound up number 3, and at once the Copper Man, in a somewhat stiff and jerky fashion, walked out of the rocky cavern, took off his copper hat, and bowed politely, and then kneeled before Dorothy. He said, "From this time forth, I am your obedient servant. Whatever you command, I will do willingly, if you keep me wound up." "What is your name?" she asked. "Tick-Tock," he replied. "My former master gave me that name because my clockwork always ticks when it is wound up." "I can hear it now," said the yellow hen. "So can I," said Dorothy. And then she added with some anxiety, "You don't strike, do you?" "No," answered Tick-Tock, "and there is no alarm connected with my machinery. I can tell the time, though, by speaking. And as I never sleep, I can waken you at any hour you wish to get up in the morning." "That's nice," said the little girl. "Only I never wish to get up in the morning." "You can sleep until I lay my egg," said the yellow hen. "Then, when I cackle, Tick-Tock will know it is time to awaken you." "Do you lay your egg very early?" asked Dorothy. "About 8 o'clock," said Billina. "And everyone ought to be up at that time, I'm sure." That was insanely hard to read, that voice. Radio Hobbies, what's going on? How are you? It's good to see you. They, yes and no, Mishins. They haven't made a movie out of this, but they did make a movie called Return to Oz, and it did feature the Gnome King, the Wheelers, but I don't know if it was this story yet. Oh, I appreciate that, Heavy D. That's quite literally how it's spelled in here. I didn't know he would talk phonetically and without contraction, but that makes sense. Now I kind of think the Tin Woodman should have spoke that way. Oh, appreciate that, Avocado. It's good to see you. I hope you're doing well. I'm enjoying the story time. All right. Got 3 more chapters, including this one. Yeah, I think we're right on par. Right on time. Yes, TikTok is his name. TikTok is his name. Chapter 5. Take off. Dorothy opens the dinner pail. Now, TikTok, said Dorothy, the first thing to be done is to find a way for us to escape from these rocks. The Wheelers are down below, you know, and threaten to kill us. There is no reason to be afraid of the Wheelers, said TikTok, the words coming more slowly than before. Why not? She asked. Because they are egg. He gave a sort of gurgle and stopped short, waving his hands frantically until suddenly he became motionless. With one arm in the air and the other held stiffly before him, with all the copper fingers of his hands spread out like a fan. Dear me, said Dorothy in a frightened tone. What could be the matter? He's run down, I suppose, said the hen calmly. You couldn't have wound him up very tight. I didn't know how much to wind him, replied the girl. But I'll try to do better next time. She ran around the copper man to the key, to take the key from the peg at the back of his neck. But it was not there. It's gone, cried Dorothy in dismay. What's gone? Asked Billina. The key. It probably fell off when he made that low bow to you, returned the hen. Look around and see if you can't find it again. Okay, Bear. Go on. Go on. Go lay down. Dorothy looked, and the hen helped her, and by the by, the girl discovered the clock key which had fallen into the crack of the rock. At once she wound up TikTok's voice, taking care to give the key as many turns as it would go around. She found this quite the task, as you may imagine if you've ever tried to wind a clock, but the machine man's first words were to assure Dorothy that he would now run for at least 24 hours. You did not wind me much at first, he said calmly. I told you that long story about the king, Evildo. So it is no wonder that I ran down. She next rewound the action clockwork, and then Billina advised her to carry the key to TikTok in her pocket so it would not get lost again. And now, said Dorothy, when all this was accomplished, tell me what you were going to say about the Wheelers. Why, they are nothing to be frightened at, said the machine. They try to make folks believe that they are very terrible, but it is a matter of fact the Wheelers are harmless enough to anyone that dares to fight them. They might try to hurt a little girl like you, perhaps, because they are very mischievous. But if I had a club, they would run away as soon as they saw me. Haven't you a club? Asked Dorothy. No, said TikTok. And you won't find such a thing among these rocks either, declared the yellow hen. Then what shall we do? Asked the girl. Wind up my think works tightly, and I will try to think of some other plan, said TikTok. So Dorothy rewound his thought machinery, and while he was thinking, she decided to eat her dinner. Billina was already pecking away at the cracks in the rock to find something to eat, so Dorothy sat down, opened her tin dinner pail. In the cover, she found a small tank that was full of very nice lemonade. It was covered by a cup, which might also, when removed, be used to drink the lemonade from. Within the pail there were 3 slices of turkey, 2 slices of cold tongue, some lobster salad, 4 slices of bread and butter, a small custard pie, an orange, and 9 large strawberries, and some nuts and raisins. Singularly enough, the nuts in this dinner pail grew already cracked, so Dorothy had no trouble picking out the meats to eat. She spread the feast upon the rock beside her and began her dinner, first offering some of it to Tick-Tock, who declined because he said he was merely a machine. Afterward, she offered to share with Billina, but the hen murmured something about dead things and said she preferred her bugs and ants. Do the lunchbox trees and the dinner pail trees belong to the Wheelers? The child asked Tick-Tock while engaged in eating her meal. Of course not, he answered. They belong to the royal family of Eve. Only, of course, there is no royal family just now because King Evildo, jumped into the sea and his wife and 10 children have been transformed by the Gnome King. So there is no one to rule the land of Ev. That I can think of, perhaps. It is for this reason the Wheelers claim the trees for their own and pick the luncheons and dinners to eat themselves. But they belong to the king, and you will find the royal E stamped up on the bottom of every dinner pail. Dorothy turned the pail over and at once discovered the royal mark upon it, and Tick-Tock had said, Are the Wheelers the only folks living in the land of Ev? Inquired the girl. No, they only inhabit a small portion of it's just the back of the woods, replied the machine. But they have always been mischievous and impertinent, and my old master, King Evildo, used to carry a whip with him when he walked out to keep the creatures in order. When I was first made, the Wheelers tried to run over me and butt me with their heads. But they soon found I was built too solid and material for them to injure. You seem very durable, said Dorothy. Who made you? The firm of Smith and Tinker, in a town of Evna, where the royal palace stands, answered Tick-Tock. Did they make many of you? Asked the child. Whoa. No, I am the only automatic mechanical man they ever completed, he replied. They were very wonderful inventors, were my makers, and quite artistic in all they did. I am sure of that, said Dorothy. Do they live in the town of Evna now? They are both gone, replied the machine. Mr. Smith was an artist as well as an inventor, and he painted a picture of a river which was so natural that as he was reaching across it to paint some flowers on the opposite bank, he fell into the water and was drowned. Oh, I'm sorry for that, exclaimed the little girl. Mr. Tinker, continued Tick-Tock, made a ladder so tall that he could rest the end of it against the moon. While he stood on the highest rung and picked the little stars to set in the points of the king's crown, but when he got to the moon, Mr. Tinker found it such a lovely place that he decided to live there. So he pulled up the ladder after him, and we haven't ever seen him since. He must have been a great loss to this country, said Dorothy, who was by this time eating her custard pie. He was, acknowledged Tick-Tock. Also, he is a great loss to me, for if I should get out of order, I do not know anyone who is able to repair me. Because I am so complicated, you have no idea how full of machinery I am. I can imagine it, said Dorothy readily. And now, continued the machine, I must stop talking and begin thinking again of a way to escape from this rock. So he turned half away in order to think without being disturbed. The best thinker I ever knew, said Dorothy to the yellow hen, was a scarecrow. Nonsense, snapped Billina. It is true, declared Dorothy. I met him in the land of Oz, and he traveled with me to the city of the great Wizard of Oz, so as to get some brains, for his head was only stuffed with straw. But it seemed to me that he thought just as well as before he got his brains as he did afterward. Do you expect me to believe all this rubbish about the land of Oz? Inquired Billina, who seemed a little cross, perhaps because bugs were scarce. What rubbish? Asked the child, who was now finishing her nuts and raisins. Why, your impossible stories about animals that can talk, and a tin woodman who is alive, and a scarecrow who can think. They are all there, said Dorothy, for I've seen them. I don't believe it, cried the hen with a toss of her head. That's 'cause you're so ignorant, replied the girl, who was a little offended at her friend Billina's speech. In the land of Oz, remarked Tick-Tock, turning toward them, anything is possible, for it is a wonderful fairy country. There, Billina, what did I say? Cried Dorothy. And then she turned to the machine and asked in an eager tone, Do you know the land of Oz, Tick-Tock? No, but I have heard about it, said the Copper Man, for it is only separated from this land of Ev by a broad desert. Dorothy clapped her hands together delightedly. I'm glad of that, she exclaimed. Makes me quite happy to be so near my old friends, the Scarecrow I told you of. Billina is the king of the land of Oz. Pardon me, he is not the king now, said Tick-Tock. Okay, Bear, go lay down. Go, lay down. He was when I left there, declared Dorothy. I know, said Tick-Tock, but there is a revolution in the land of Oz, and the Scarecrow was deposed by a soldier woman named General Ginger, and then Ginger was disposed by a little girl named Ozma, who was the rightful heir to the throne and now rules the land under the title of Ozma of Oz. That is news to me, said Dorothy thoughtfully. But I suppose lots of things have happened since I left the land of Oz. I wonder what has become of the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman, and the Cowardly Lion. And I wonder who this girl Ozma is, for I've never heard of her before. But Tick-Tock did not reply to this. He had turned around again to resume his thinking. Dorothy packed the rest of the food back into the pail as to not be wasteful of good things, and the yellow hen forgot her dignity far enough to pick up all of her scattered crumbs, which she ate rather greedily. Although she had so lately pretended to despise the things that Dorothy preferred as food, by this time Tick-Tock approached them with his stiff bow. Be kind enough to follow me, he said, and I will lead you away from here to the town of Evna, where you will be more comfortable, and also I will protect you from the Wheelers. All right, answered Dorothy promptly. I'm ready. I love that. You do that robot voice. I just kind of have the cadence in my head now as I'm reading it, because it's spelled exactly like that. It's all like dashed out, so I'm just reading every word as I see it. Good night. Good night. Good night, Avocado. I hope you have a good night, and I will see you next time for sure. As we get into our second to last chapter, chapter 6, The Heads of Langwider. I think I know where this one's going. Because in Return to Oz, there was the Gnome King. There was a Princess Mombi, not the Mombi we knew from the last book, and the Wheelers. Chapter 6, The Heads of Langwider. Or Wydeer. We'll go with Wydeer. They walked slowly down the path between the rocks, Tick-Tock going first, Dorothy following him, and the yellow hen trotting along last of all. At the foot of the path, the Copper Man leaned down and tossed aside with ease the rocks that encumbered the way. Then he turned to Dorothy and said, Let me carry your dinner pail. She placed it in his right hand at once, and the copper fingers closed firmly over the stout handle. Then the little procession marched out upon the level sand. As soon as the three Wheelers who were guarding the mound saw them, they began to shout their wild cries and rolled swiftly toward the little group, as if to capture them or bar their way. But when the foremost had approached near enough, Tick-Tock swung the tin dinner pail and struck the Wheeler's sharp blow over its head with the queer weapon. Perhaps it did not hurt very much, but it made a great noise, and the Wheeler uttered a howl and tumbled over upon its side. The next minute, it scrambled to its wheels and rolled away as fast as it could, screeching with fear at the same time. "I told you they were harmless," began Tick-Tock. But before he could say any more, another wheeler was upon them. Crack went the dinner pail against his head, knocking his straw hat a dozen feet away, and that was enough for this wheeler also. It rolled away after the first one, and the third one did not wait to be pounded with the pail, but it joined its fellows as quickly as the wheels would whirl. The yellow hen gave a cackle of delight, and flying to a perch upon Tick-Tock's shoulder, she said, "Bravely done, my copper friend, and wisely thought of, too. Now we are free of those ugly creatures." But just then a large band of wheelers rolled from the forest, and, relying upon their numbers to conquer, they advanced fiercely upon Tick-Tock. Dorothy grabbed Billina in her arms and held her tight, and the machine embraced the form of the little girl with his left arm to better protect her. Then the wheelers were upon them. Rattly bang bang went the dinner pail in every direction, and it made so much clatter bumping against the heads of the wheelers that they were much more frightened than hurt, and fled in great panic, all, that is, except their leader. This wheeler had stumbled against another and fallen flat upon his back, and before he could get to his wheels under him to rise again, Tick-Tock had fastened his copper finger into the neck of the gorgeous jacket of his foe and held him fast. "Tell your people to go away," commanded the machine. The leader of the wheelers hesitated to give this order, so Tick-Tock shook him as a terrier dog does a rat, until the wheeler's teeth rattled together with a noise like hailstones on a window pane. Then, as soon as the creature could get his breath, it shouted to the others to roll away, which they immediately did. "Now," said Tick-Tock, "you shall come with us and tell me what I want to know." "You will be sorry for treating me this way," whined the wheeler. "I am a terribly fierce person." "As for that," answered Tick-Tock, "I am only a machine, and I cannot feel sorrow or joy, no matter what happens. But you are wrong to think yourself terrible or fierce." "Why so?" asked the wheeler. "Because no one else thinks as you do. Your wheels make you helpless to injure anyone, for you have no fists, and you cannot scratch or even pull hair. Nor have you any feet to kick with. All you can do is yell and shout, and that does not hurt anyone at all." The wheeler burst into a flood of tears, to Dorothy's great surprise. "Now I and my people are ruined forever," he sobbed, "for you have discovered our secret, being so helpless. Our only hope is to make people afraid of us by pretending we are very fierce and terrible, and writing in the sand warnings to beware the wheelers. Until now we have frightened everyone. But since you have discovered our weakness, our enemies will fall upon us and make us very miserable and unhappy." "Oh no!" exclaimed Dorothy, who was sorry to see this beautifully dressed wheeler so miserable. "Tick-Tock will keep your secret, and so will Billina and I. Only you must promise not to try to frighten children any more if they come near you." "I won't, indeed I won't," promised the wheeler, ceasing to cry and become more cheerful. "I'm not really bad, you know, but we have to pretend to be terrible in order to prevent others from attacking us." "That is not exactly true," said Tick-Tock, starting to walk toward the path. Sorry, all this cat is rubbing up on this table. Come on, stop. Go. Yeah, you're cute. Path through the forest, and still holding fast to his prisoner, who rolled away along beside him. "You and your people are full of mischief, and like you bother those who fear you, and you are often impudent and disagreeable too. But if you will try to cure those faults, I will not tell anyone how helpless you are." "I'll try, of course," replied the wheeler eagerly, "and thank you, Mr. Tick-Tock, for your kindness." "I am only a machine," said Tick-Tock. "I cannot be kind any more than I can be sorry or glad. I can only do what I am wound up to do." "Are you wound up to keep my secret?" asked the wheeler anxiously. "Yes, if you behave yourself. But tell me, who rules the land of Ev now?" asked the machine. "There is no ruler," was the answer, "because every member of the royal family is imprisoned by the Gnome King." but the prison Langwedier, who is a niece, Princess Langwedier, who was a niece of our late King Evildu, lives in part of the royal palace and takes as much money out of the royal treasury as she can spend. The Princess Langwedier is not exactly a ruler, you see, because she doesn't rule, but she is the nearest approach to a ruler we have at the present. I do not remember her, said Tick-Tock. What does she look like? That I cannot say, replied the Wheeler, although I have seen her 20 times. Dude, are you serious? Sorry, Al. Every time I see her, and the only way her subjects can recognize her at all is by means of her beautiful ruby key, which it always wears on a chain attached to her left wrist. When we see the key, we know we are beholding the princess. That is strange, said Dorothy in astonishment. Do you mean to say that so many different princesses are one and the same person? Not exactly, answered the Wheeler. There is, of course, but one princess, but she appears to us in many forms, which are all more or less beautiful. She must be a witch, exclaimed the girl. I do not think so, declared the Wheeler, but there is some mystery connected to her, nevertheless. She is a very vain creature, and lives mostly in a room surrounded by mirrors, so that she can admire herself whichever which way she looks. No one answered this speech, because they had just passed out of the forest and their attention was fixed upon the scene before them, a beautiful vale in which there were many fruit trees and green fields with pretty farmhouses scattered here and there, and broad, smooth roads that led in every direction. In the center of this lovely vale, about a mile from where our friends were standing, rose the tall spires of the royal palace, which glittered brightly against their background of blue sky. The palace was surrounded by charming grounds full of flowers and shrubbery. Several tinkling fountains could be seen, and there were pleasant walks bordered by rows of white marble statuary. All these details Dorothy was, of course, unable to notice or admire until they had advanced along the road to the position quite near the palace, and she was still looking at the pretty sights when her little party entered the grounds and approached the big front door of the king's own apartments. To their disappointment, they found the door tightly closed. A sign was tacked to the panel which read as follows: Owner absent. Please knock at the third door in the left wing. Now, said Tick-Tock to the captive Wheeler, you must show us the way to the left wing. Very well, agreed the prisoner. It is around here, at the right. How can the left wing be at the right? Demanded Dorothy, who feared the Wheeler was fooling them. Because there used to be 3 wings, and 2 were torn down, so the one on the right is the only one left. It is a trick of the Princess Langwedier to prevent visitors from annoying her. Then the captive led them around the wing, after which the machine man, having no further use for the Wheeler, permitted him to depart and rejoin his fellows. He immediately rolled away at great pace and was soon lost to sight. Tick-Tock now counted the doors in the wing and knocked loudly upon the third one. It was opened by a little maid in a cap trimmed with gay ribbons, who bowed respectfully and asked, What do you wish, good people? Are you the Princess Langwedier? Asked Dorothy. No, miss, I am her servant, replied the maid. May I see the princess, please? I will tell her you are here, miss, and ask her to grant you an audience, said the maid. Step in, please, and take a seat in the drawing room. So Dorothy walked in, followed closely by the machine. But as the yellow hen tried to enter after them, the little maid said, Shoo! And flapped her apron in Bellina's face. Shoo yourself, retorted the hen, drawing back in anger and ruffling up her feathers. Haven't you any better manners than that? Oh, do you talk? Inquired the maid, evidently surprised. Can't you hear me? Snapped Bellina. Drop that apron, and get out of the doorway so I may enter with my friends." "The princess won't like it," said the maid, hesitating. "I don't care whether she likes it or not," replied Bellina, and fluttering her wings with a loud noise, she flew straight at the maid's face. The little servant at once ducked her head, and the hen reached Dorothy's side safely. "Very well," sighed the maid. "If you're all ruined because of this obstinate hen, don't blame me for it. It isn't safe to annoy Princess Langwidere." "Tell her we are waiting, if you please," Dorothy requested with dignity. "Bellina is my friend and must go wherever I go." Without more words, the maid led them to a richly furnished drawing room, lighted with subdued rainbow tints that came in through beautiful stained glass windows. "Remain here," she said. "What name shall I give the princess?" "I am Dorothy Gale of Kansas," replied the child, "and this gentleman is a machine man named Tick-Tock. That yellow hen is my friend Bellina." The little servant bowed and withdrew, going through several passages and mounting 2 marble stairways before she came to the apartments occupied by her mistress. Princess Langwidere's sitting room was paneled with great mirrors which reached from ceiling to floor. So the ceiling was composed of mirrors, and the floor was polished silver that reflected every object upon it. So when Langwidere sat in her easy chair and played soft melodies upon her mandolin, her form was mirrored hundreds of times in walls and ceilings and floors. Every which way the lady turned her head, she could see and admire her own features. This she loved to do, and just as the maid entered, she was saying to herself, "This head with the auburn hair and the hazelnut eyes is quite attractive. I must wear it more often, and I have done of late, although it may not be the best of my collection." "You have company, Your Highness," announced the maid, bowing low. "Who is it?" asked Langwidere, yawning. "Dorothy Gale of Kansas, Mr. Tick-Tock, and Bellina," answered the maid. "What a queer lot of names," murmured the princess, beginning to be a little interested. "What are they like? Is Dorothy Gale of Kansas pretty?" "She might be called so," the maid replied. "And is Mr. Tick-Tock attractive?" continued the princess. "That I cannot say, Your Highness, but he seems very bright. Will your gracious highness see them?" "Oh, I may as well, Nanda. But I am tired admiring this head, and if my visitor has any claim to beauty, I must take care that she does not surpass me. So I will go to my cabinet and change to number 17, which I think is my best appearance, don't you?" "Your number 17 is exceedingly beautiful," answered Nanda, with another bow. Again the princess yawned, then she said, "Help me to rise." So the maid assisted her to gain her feet, although Langwidere was the stronger of the two, and then the princess slowly walked across the silver floor to her cabinet, leaning heavily at every step upon Nanda's arm. Now I must explain to you that the Princess Langwidere had 30 heads, as many as there are days in the month. But, of course, she could only wear one of them at a time, because she had but one neck. These heads were kept in what she called her cabinet, which was a beautiful dressing room that lay just between Langwidere's sleeping chamber and the mirrored sitting room. Each head was in a separate cupboard lined with velvet. The cupboards ran all around the sides of the dressing room and had elaborately carved doors with gold numbers on the outside and jeweled framed mirrors on the inside. When the princess got out of her crystal bed in the morning, she went to her cabinet, opened one of her velvet-lined cupboards, and took the head it contained from its golden shelf. Then, by the aid of the mirror inside the open door, she put on the head, as neat and straight as she could, and afterward called her maids to robe her for the day. She always wore a simple white costume that suited all her heads, but for being able to change her face whenever she liked, the princess had no interest in wearing a variety of gowns and have other ladies who are compelled to wear the same face consistently. Of course, the 30 heads were in great variety, no two formed alike, but all being of exceeding loveliness. There were heads with golden hair, brown hair, rich auburn hair, and black hair, but none with gray hair. The heads had eyes of blue, of gray, of hazel, of brown, and of black, but there were no red eyes among them, and all were bright and handsome. The noses were Grecian, Roman, Rutos, and Oriental, reprising all types of beauty, and the mouths were all assorted sizes and shapes, displaying pearly teeth when the head smiled. As for dimples, they appeared in cheeks and chins wherever they might be most charming, and one or two heads had freckles upon their face to contrast the better with the brilliancy of their complexion. One key unlocked all the velvet cupboards containing these treasures, a curious key carved from a single blood-red ruby, and this was fastened to a strong but slender chain which the princess wore around her left wrist. When Nanda had supported the Langoudier to a position in front of cupboard number 17, the princess unlocked the door with her ruby key, and after handing head number 9, which she had been wearing, to the maid, she took number 17 from its shelf and fitted it to her neck. It had black hair and dark eyes and a lovely pearl and white complexion, and when Langoudier wore it, she knew she was remarkably beautiful in appearance. There was only one trouble with number 17, the temper that went with it, and, which was hidden somewhere under the glossy black hair, was fiery, harsh, and haughty in the extreme, and it often led the princess to do unpleasant things which she regretted when she came to wear her other heads. But she did not remember this today, and went to meet her guests in the drawing-room with the feeling of certainty that she would surprise them with her beauty. However, she was greatly disappointed to find that her visitors were merely a small girl in a gingham dress, and a copper man that would only go when wound up, and a yellow hen that was sitting contentedly in Langoudier's best working basket, where there was a china egg used for darning stockings. It may surprise you to learn that the princess ever does such a common thing as darn stockings, but if you will stop to think, you will realize that a princess is sure to wear holes in her stockings, the same as other people, only it isn't considered quite polite to mention the matter. "Oh," said Langoudier, slightly lifting the nose of number 17. "I thought someone of importance had been called." "Then you were right," declared Dorothy. "I am a good deal of importance myself, and when Bellina lays an egg, she has the proudest cackle you ever heard. As for Tick-Tock, he's the—" Stop, commanded the princess, with an angry flash of her splendid eyes. "How dare you annoy me with your senseless chatter?" "Why, you horrid thing," said Dorothy, who was not accustomed to being treated so rudely. The princess looked at her more closely. "Tell me," she resumed, "are you of royal blood?" "Better than that, ma'am," said Dorothy. "I came from Kansas." "Huh?" cried the princess, scornfully. "You are a foolish child, and I cannot allow you to annoy me. Run away, you little goose, and bother someone else." Dorothy was so indignant that for a moment she could find no words to reply. But she rose from her chair and was about to leave the room when the princess, who had been scanning the girl's face, stopped her by saying more gently, "Come nearer to me." Dorothy obeyed without a thought or fear, and stood before the princess while Langoudier examined her face with careful attention. "You are rather attractive," said the lady presently. "Not at all beautiful, you understand, but you have a certain style of prettiness that is different from that of any of my 30 heads. So I believe I will take your head and give you number 26 for it." "Well, I believe you won't," exclaimed Dorothy. "It will do you no good to refuse," continued the princess, "for I need your head for my collection, and in the land of Ev my will is law. I never have cared much for number 26, and you will find it is very little worn. Besides, it will do you just as well as the one you are wearing, for all practical purposes." "I don't know anything about your number 26, and I don't want to," said Dorothy firmly. "I'm not used to taking cast-off things, so I'll just keep my own head." "You refuse?" cried the princess with a frown. "Of course I do," was the reply.
Then, said Langwidere, I shall lock you up in the tower until you decide to obey me. Nanda, turning to her maid, call my army. Nanda rang a silver bell, and at once a big, fat colonel in a bright red uniform entered the room, followed by 10 lean soldiers who all looked sad and discouraged and saluted the princess in a very melancholy fashion. Carry that girl to the North Tower and lock her up, cried the princess, pointing to Dorothy. 2 here is to obey, answered the big red colonel, and caught the child by her arm. But at that moment, Tick-Tock raised his dinner pail and pounded it so forcibly against the colonel's head that the big officer sat down upon the floor with a sudden bump, looking both dazed and very much astonished. Help! He shouted, and the 10 lean shoulders sprang to assist their leader. There was great excitement for the next few moments, and Tick-Tock had knocked down 7 of the army, who were sprawling in every direction upon the carpet, when suddenly the machine paused, with the dinner pail raised for another blow, and remained perfectly motionless. My action has run down, he called to Dorothy. Wind me up quick. She tried to obey, but the big colonel had by this time managed to get upon his feet again, so he grabbed fast hold of the girl, and she was so helpless to escape. This is too bad, said the machine. I ought to have run 6 hours longer. At least, I suppose my long walk and my fight with the wheelers made me run down faster than usual. Well, it can't be helped, said Dorothy with a sigh. Will you exchange heads with me? Demanded the princess. No, indeed, cried Dorothy. Then lock her up, said Langwidere to her soldiers, and they led Dorothy to a high tower at the north of the palace and locked her securely within. The soldiers afterward tried to lift Tick-Tock, but they found the machine so solid and heavy that they could not stir it, so they left him standing in the center of the drawing room. People will think I have a new statue, said Langwidere, so it won't matter in the least, and Nanda can keep him well polished. What shall we do with the hen? Asked the colonel, who had just discovered Billina in the workbasket. Put her in the chicken house, answered the princess. Someday I'll have her fried for breakfast. She looks rather tough, your highness, says Nanda doubtfully. That is a base slander, cried Billina, struggling frantically in the colonel's arms. But the breed of chickens I come from is said to be poison to all princesses. Then, remarked Langwidere, I will not fry the hen, but keep her to lay eggs, and if she doesn't do her duty, I will have her drowned in the horse trough. Oh, she sounds like a delight, doesn't she? What's up, Kedro? How you doing, man? No worries at all. I appreciate you, Missions. Thanks for dropping in. And drawing from Baum to add community art. Pokemon. Man, I couldn't even imagine. Hope you're doing well, buddy. I'm going to move quickly into our last chapter for the night, just because the Kindle is dying, and I want to get through this last chapter 7, and the title of the book, Ozma, right? Now we see Ozma of Oz to the rescue, and I'm really hoping that Dorothy gets to keep her head. So in the movie Return to Oz, they gave that to Princess Mombi, probably because Langwidere isn't really easy for kids to say. But if you haven't seen the movie Return to Oz, I would do it. How she gets to Oz is a little different, but it's a good movie. And you get to see the Wheelers. Chapter 7, Ozma of Oz to the rescue. Nanda brought Dorothy bread and water for her supper, and she slept upon a hard stone couch with a single pillow and a silken coverlet. In the morning, she leaned out of her window of her prison in the tower to see if there was any way to escape the room. The room was not very high up when compared to other modern buildings, but it was far enough above the trees and the farmhouses to give her a good view of the surrounding country. To the east she saw the forest, with the sands beyond it and the ocean beyond that. There was even a dark speck upon the shore that she thought might be the chicken coop in which she had arrived in this single country. Then she looked to the north, and saw a deep but narrow valley lying between two rocky mountains, and the third mountain that shut off the valley at the further end. Westward, the fertile land of Ev suddenly ended a little way from the palace, and the girl could see miles and miles of sandy desert that stretched farther than her eyes could reach. It was this desert, she thought, with much interest, that alone separated her from the wonderful land of Oz, and she remembered sorrowfully that she had been told no one had ever been able to cross this dangerous waste but herself. Once a cyclone had carried her across it, and a magical pair of silver shoes had carried her back again. But now she had neither a cyclone nor silver shoes to assist her, and her condition was sad indeed, for she had become prisoner of a disagreeable princess who insisted she must exchange her head for another one that she was not used to at all, and which might not fit her at all. Really, there seemed no hope of help from her or her friends in the land of Oz. Thoughtfully, she gazed from her narrow window on all the desert. Not a living thing was stirring. Wait, though. Something surely was stirring on in the desert, something her eyes had not observed at first. Now it seemed like a cloud. Now it seemed like a spot of silver. Now it seemed to be a mass of rainbow colors that moved swiftly toward her. What could it be, she wondered. Then gradually, but in a brief space of time, nevertheless, the vision drew near enough to Dorothy to make out what it was. A broad green carpet was unrolling itself upon the desert, while advancing across the carpet was a wonderful procession that made the girl open her eyes in amazement as she gazed. First came a magnificent golden chariot drawn by a great lion and an immense tiger, who stood shoulder to shoulder and trotted along as gracefully as his well-matched team of thoroughbred horses. And standing upright within the chariot was a beautiful girl, clothed in flowing robes of silver gauze and wearing a jeweled diadem upon her dainty head. She held in one hand the satin ribbons that guided her astonishing team, and in the other an ivory wand that separated at the top into two prongs, the prongs being tipped by the letters O and Z, made of glistening diamonds set closely together. The girl seemed rather neither old nor larger than Dorothy herself, and at once the prisoner in the tower guessed that the lovely driver of the chariot must be that Ozma of Oz of whom she had lately heard from TikTok. Following close behind the chariot, Dorothy saw her old friend, the Scarecrow, riding calmly astride the wooden sawhorse, which pranced and trotted as natural as any meat horse could have done. I'm sorry, it's the cat moving the table. And then came Nick Chopper, the Tin Woodman, and his funnel-shaped cap tipped carelessly over his left ear, his gleaming axe over his right shoulder, and his whole body sparkling as brightly as it ever done in the old days when she first knew him. The Tin Woodman was on foot, marching at the head of a company of 27 soldiers, of whom were some lean and some fat, some short and some tall, but all 27 were dressed as handsome uniforms of various designs and colors, no two being alike in any respect. Behind the soldiers, the green carpet rolled itself up again, so that there were always just enough of it for the procession to walk upon, in order that their feet might not come in contact with the deadly, life-destroying sands of the desert. Dorothy knew at once it was a magic carpet she beheld, and her heart beat high with hopes of joy, and realized she was soon to be rescued and allowed to greet her dearly beloved friends of Oz, the Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion. Indeed, the girl felt herself as good as rescued as soon as she recognized those in the procession, for she well knew the courage and loyalty of her old comrades, and also believed that any others who came from their marvelous country would prove to be pleasant and reliable acquaintances. As soon as the last bit of desert was passed and all the procession from the beautiful and dainty Ozma to the last soldier had reached the grassy meadows of the land of Ev, the magic carpet rolled itself together and entirely disappeared. Then the chariot driver turned her lion and tiger into a broad roadway leading up to the palace, and the others followed while Dorothy still gazed from her tower window in eager excitement. They came quite close to the front door of the palace and then halted. The Scarecrow, dismounting from his sawhorse to approach the sign, fastened to the door that he might read what it said. Dorothy, just above him, could keep silent no longer. "Here I am," she shouted as loudly as she could. "Here's Dorothy." "Dorothy who?" asked the Scarecrow, tipping his head to look upward until he nearly lost his balance and tumbled over backwards. "Dorothy Gale, of course, your friend from Kansas," she answered. "Why, hello, Dorothy," said the Scarecrow. "What in the world are you doing up there?" "Nothing," she called down, "because there's nothing to do. Save me, my friend." "Save me?" "You seem to be quite safe now," replied the Scarecrow. "But I am a prisoner. I'm locked in, so I can't get out." "Well, that's all right," said the Scarecrow. "You might be worse off, little Dorothy. Just consider the matter. You can't get drowned, or be run over by a wheeler, or fall out of an apple tree. Some folks would think they're lucky to be up there." "Well, I don't," declared the girl, "and I want to get down immediately. I see you and the Tin Woodman and the Cowardly Lion." "Very well," said the Scarecrow, nodding. "It shall be just as you say, little friend. Who locked you up?" "The Princess Langwidere, who is a horrid creature," she answered. At this, Ozma, who had been listening carefully to the conversation, called to Dorothy from her chariot, asking, "Why did the princess lock you up, my dear?" "Because," exclaimed Dorothy, "I wouldn't let her have my head for her collection and take an old cast-off head in exchange for it." "I do not blame you," exclaimed Ozma promptly. "I will see the princess at once and oblige her to liberate you." "Oh, thank you very, very much," cried Dorothy, who, as soon as she heard the sweet voice of the girlish ruler of Oz, knew that she would soon learn to love her dearly. Ozma now drove her chariot around the third door of the wing, upon which the Tin Woodman boldly proceeded to knock. As soon as the maid opened the door, Ozma, bearing in hand her ivory wand, stepped into the hall and made her way at once to the drawing room, followed by all her company, except the lion and the tiger, and the 27 soldiers made such a noise and clatter that the little maid Nanda ran away screaming to her mistress, whereupon the Princess Langwidere, roused to great anger by this rude invasion of her palace, came running into the drawing room without any assistance whatsoever. There she stood before the slight and delicate form of the little girl from Oz and cried out, "How dare you enter my palace unabided?" Unbidden. "Leave this room at once, or I will bind you and all your people in chains and throw you into my darkest dungeons." "What a dangerous lady," murmured the Scarecrow in a soft voice. "She seems a little nervous," replied the Tin Woodman. But Ozma only smiled at the angry princess. "Sit down, please," she said quietly. "I have traveled a long way to see you, and you must listen to what I have to say." "Must?" screamed the princess, her black eyes flashing with fury, for she still wore number 17's head. "Must to me?" "To be sure," said Ozma. "I am the ruler of the land of Oz, and I am powerful enough to destroy all of your kingdom, if I so wish. Yet I did not come here to do harm, but rather to free the royal family of Ev from the thrall of the Gnome King, the news having reached me that he is holding the queen and her children prisoners." Hearing these words, Langwidere suddenly became quiet. "I wish you could indeed free my aunt and her 10 royal children," she said eagerly, "for if they restored to their proper forms and station, they could rule the kingdom of Ev themselves, and that would save me a lot of worry and trouble. At present, there are at least 10 minutes every day I must devote to affairs of state, and I would like to be able to spend my whole time in admiring my beautiful heads." "Then we will presently discuss this matter," said Ozma. and try to find a way to liberate your aunt and cousins. But first, you must liberate another prisoner. The little girl you have locked up in your tower. Of course, said Langwidere readily. I had forgotten all about her. That was yesterday, you know, and a princess cannot be expected to remember today what she did yesterday. Come with me, and I will release the prisoner at once. So Ozma followed her, and they passed up the stairs that led to the room in the tower. While they were gone, Ozma's followers remained in the drawing room, and the Scarecrow was leaning against a form that he had mistaken for a copper statue, when a harsh metallic voice said suddenly in his ear, Get off my foot, please. You are scratching my polish. Oh, excuse me, he replied, hastily drawing back. Are you alive? No, said Tick-Tock. I am only a machine, but I can think and speak and act when I am properly wound up. Just know my action is run down, and Dorothy has the key to it. That's all right, replied the Scarecrow. Dorothy will soon be free, and then she'll attend to your works. But it must be a great misfortune not to be alive. I'm sorry for you. Why? Asked Tick-Tock. Because you have no brains, as I have, said the Scarecrow. Oh, yes, I have, returned Tick-Tock. I am fitted with Smith and Tinker's improved combination steel brains. They are what make me think. What sort of brains are you fitted with? I don't know, admitted the Scarecrow. They were given to me by the Great Wizard of Oz, and I didn't get a chance to examine them before putting them in. But they work splendidly, and my conscience is very active. Have you a conscience? No. And a heart, I suppose? Added the Tin Woodman. Oh, sorry. Added the Tin Woodman, who had been listening with interest to this conversation. No, said Tick-Tock. Then, continued the Tin Woodman, I regret to say that you are greatly inferior to my friend the Scarecrow and myself, for we are both alive, and he has brains which do not need to be wound up, while I have an excellent heart that is continuously beating in my chest. I congratulate you, replied Tick-Tock. I cannot help being your inferior, for I am a mere machine. When I am wound up, I do my duty by going just as my machinery is made to go. I have no idea how full of machinery I am. I can guess, said Scarecrow, looking at the machine man curiously. Some day I'd like to take you apart and see just how you are made. Do not do that, I beg of you, said Tick-Tock, for you cannot put me together again, and my usefulness will be destroyed. Oh, are you useful? Asked the Scarecrow, surprised. Very, said Tick-Tock. In that case, the Scarecrow kindly promised, I won't fool with your interior at all, for I am a poor mechanic and might mix you up. Thank you, said Tick-Tock. Just then Ozma returned. I re-entered the room, leading Dorothy by the hand and followed closely by the Princess Langwidere. There we go. That's the end of Chapter 7. We just made it to this thing's about to kick it. Turn to Oz is dark, yeah. Oh, have a great night, Rafa. I appreciate you popping in, brother, as always, and keep on writing. Hey, what's up, Spencer? Can't play that, right? Uh-oh. Next chapter is called The Hungry Tiger, and one question I see is, where's Bellina? Think the tiger guy? Excellent. Well, I appreciate you guys hanging out with me for a little bit. And, sorry it went a little bit late. Crazy story. I've not read them all. Yeah. No, not Bill. No, poor Bill. It's a crazy story so far, let me tell you. But I gotta kind of question, like, Frank L. Baum and what he was thinking, and making an antagonist somebody that literally takes the heads of attractive women to wear them.
Just why would that be something that he thinks would be like a home run? But I mean, here we are, still reading it, so. But I think the wheelies are scary too, man. The wheelers are freaking scary, especially having their arms and legs the same length. Yeah, not fun. But I really, really, really appreciate you guys being here with me tonight. I'm feeling a little homesick and a lot of anxious. And so just being able to sit and read with you guys for a couple hours like I do every Monday, it really helped me out. Don't know if I'll be streaming again this week, although I do know it's not going to be all week here, so I will be home for the weekend. So if you do and are around on Saturday, y'all, and you just want to hang around and jump into the old school streaming style and start going through some of the artwork, looking for artists and making theories and whatnot, like definitely drop in on Saturday. I will be streaming. Whether I'm going to do one on Thursday or not really depends on if I'm home, but we'll have to decide what we do. But hanging out with y'all has become one of my favorite things to do in this stream, so need this drawing stream. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, maybe we'll try that on Thursday. Maybe we'll do a Thursday evening stream. Yeah, I'll see what I can do, because that's not a bad idea. Looking forward to it. Heavy D, man, I appreciate you coming back, being here for the reading stream, man. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, it means the world to see you. Is there anybody that's still live right now by chance? Or are we just all ready to raid the inside of our eyelids at this point? Ugh. Dang, Trainer Spree is still watching. Trainer Spree got the DPM rate, I heard. Yeah, I think that this would be as good a night as any. Yeah. So ready to fall out to you, ready. But the story was good. Oh, I appreciate that. And yeah, we'll keep going next week. We'll do the next 7 chapters. This one's gonna go pretty quick, but I'm already starting to see a lot, and no disrespect on the first 2 books, but a lot better writing in these 2. And I'm not really communicating it a whole lot, but he actually added Dorothy's southern twang and made them all abbreviated and stuff, so I think it was really neat. But yes, I think that that's going to be the case, Alien. I see a couple people on, but you know what, I think that we're all either going to go and do what we're going to do, but I think we're all going to go to sleep. So with that, if this is how you end your Monday and you choose to use this for sleep, thank you all so much for being here. Remember to go out and get everything you set out to get, and don't let anything stop you. But it takes $0 to be a good person, y'all. Always do it with peace and love first and foremost. And thank you all so much for believing in ghosts. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your night. I will see you on Thursday, possibly, definitely on Saturday. Thanks, y'all.